Why should MedTech companies move to more sustainable devices? This is the question we're setting out to solve in this video. And here are the 4 things that make MedTech move in terms of sustainability. So overall, there are 4 factors. Number 1 is the SBTi commitments. So internal commitments towards more sustainability of the company. This is due to investor pressure. This is due to public pressure and commitments of these companies to reduce their CO2 footprint. Then we have competition acting. So sustainable medical devices hitting the market that are in competition with your devices, and therefore you want to compete with them. A big part of in here is fear of missing out on this market opportunity. Then we have the customer pressure. So hospitals, they equate single-use medical devices and especially waste associated with them with sustainability or with bad sustainability. And therefore, where you have a lot of waste, you will see customer pressure in order to have more sustainable medical devices. And then we have regulatory developments. We have the PPWR and DSPR. And then we have also the enabling the consumer for the green transition regulation. And that, of course, pushes you as a company towards more sustainability. And here we have a high time horizon of around 5 to 7 years. So let's get into the topics. Number 1, the commitments. So we can look at this picture and you see a bunch of very recognizable names in the MedTech industry. And if you go through the 100 biggest MedTech companies in the world by turnover, you find that around 49 of them are SBTi committed or have verified climate targets. And that is around 55 to 60% of the global market share, depending on which market size you assume. That means that 60% of the MedTech industry is already committed to SBTi, so to reducing their carbon footprint. And in there is that they will have to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, and the Scope 3 emissions will hit any and all of the suppliers of these big companies, meaning that if you're a supplier of these companies, you will get under pressure to reduce your carbon footprint as well. So we then can add to this is that the CO2 footprint of a typical medical technology company is going to be around 95% in Scope 3. So there was a survey of the Swiss MedTech when they did their net zero roadmap, and they had 7 modeling companies that they looked at. And what they found is that 95% of the total carbon emissions are in Scope 3. And the 2 biggest points by far is materials. So purchased goods and services is going to be 48% of the total carbon emissions. And then 43% is the use phase. So if you have an electrical medical device or something that uses gases, there is a big part where you can have an impact, and the materials. So totaling those 2, the use phase and the purchased goods and services, are 91%. And that is your biggest 2 levers that you have. So this is number 1, your commitments to reducing your CO2 footprint. This is why you want to change your materials, your devices, because this is actually your biggest lever. The devices that you sell, the products that you sell, the use phase of them and the materials that they're made from, this is where all your carbon footprint is. Good. Moving on, competition acting. So we have a bunch of sustainable medical devices hitting the market from, let's say, bio-based, physical content, bio-based or drop-in solutions to recycling and take-back systems, eco-design implemented, or hybrid use devices. I think that the 5 biggest, let's say, disciplines or the disciplines that are the furthest in this are auto-injectors, are ophthalmology, lab consumables, endoscopy, surgical devices, and I would add to that also packaging. But everywhere where you have a lot of visible medical waste, there is pressure. And that moves us towards the last one, actually, the customer pressure. That moves us to customer pressure, of course, but we also have the regulatory that we have to do before that. So Regulatory developments, we're going to go into that. MedTech Europe did a study, and with the full report that we can link in the description that they have on their website. And the findings of this report, and I took the graphic from this report, shows that the medtech industry is already heavily and densely regulated. But what you have here, you have different, let's say, categories. Let's not go into too much of the details, but the light green ones is ensuring the protection of the people and the planet, which is basically rough sustainability. So there's the REACH regulation, there's the PPWR, DSPR, ROS, the deforestation regulation and everything. And you see it's a big chunk of regulation that is not fully implemented yet, that hasn't hit you yet. So you're going to get hit by a regulatory tsunami in terms of sustainability regulations. And MedTech is currently sleeping on this. Not everybody, but most of MedTech is. And this is going to be a key driver to make your devices more sustainable, because you're forced to, because you will be non-compliant if you don't do it. And in the end, there's a call for, let's say, simplification. And I think it's also very justified to do so, because this burden is already pretty heavy. But don't fool yourself. It's not going to go away. It's like the simplification means now that the train is not moving at 300 miles per hour. It's only moving at 100 miles per hour right now. So just make sure that you have this on your radar, because this is going to move your devices towards more sustainability by force, by not having you be compliant anymore. Good. And the last part, and I think this is the most important part, is the customer pressure. So if the customer is willing to buy a sustainable device and he's taking into account in his purchasing decision if your device is sustainable or not, it's going to have an impact on your product development strategy, of course. So I think there are three main regions, or let's say aspects to this. The first thing is tenders. So what we see in the Nordics, or also in the UK with the NHS, there are sustainability requirements getting into the tenders, and you're going to get asked questions that you will have to answer, and that you will get deducted some points for not being sustainable. Don't get me wrong, performance and cost is still going to be the number one criteria. Number one is performance, second is cost, and then sustainability is a tiebreaker. So if your competition is as performing and as cheap as you are, but they are more sustainable, they'll get the tender and you do not. Then the second thing is, I would say, initiatives. So what you see is there's a bunch of recycling initiatives like REMIT, and also Vinyl Plus, Healthcare Plastics Recycling Council. This addresses the medical waste, and you see that there's huge pressure towards the waste topic. But what you also have is surgeons, either individual surgeons or NGOs like iSustain here in ophthalmology, pushing the industry towards more sustainable devices, more sustainable practices, because they see the single-use medical waste all day long and they want to do something about it. Or like the term in labs, I've heard this multiple times, is that there are a lot of single-use lab consumables, and what they do is like they put them all on top of each other, and then they take a photo and call it the wall of shame. And then they send it to the lab consumables manufacturer. And that is putting pressure on you, even if it's not like, oh, we're not going to buy your product. It's not like that, but it's more like, hey, can you do something about this? This will be a benefit to us. And then what we also see is labels. And I would like to mention one, like the ACT label in the lab space for more green labs. This is taking over, and it's getting towards something like a unified standard, so to say, for sustainable lab products. So you see all these, let's say, pointers that indicate customer pressure. And where there's the most customer pressure, you will get the sustainable devices faster. Then you have competition. Then it's the fear of missing out starts to set in. And these, let's say, customer pressure and competition, they start to reinforce each other. And this is also why we have the disciplines that are moving, because there's a reinforcement between customer pressure and, of course, the competition. So we have the 4 factors summarized. So we have commitments to SBTi to reduce the carbon footprint. Then we have the competition that is faster on the market. And then the availability of these sustainable medical devices puts on the pressure for your devices to be more sustainable. And what you also have, and then they didn't mention this before, is it's like you don't have the adoption risk anymore. You know that someone is going to buy this. And then customer pressure starts to increase also with the availability, because now the customer knows that it is actually possible to make the devices more sustainable. And then in the end, it's a certain amount of players that are only going to get moving if the regulations hit. If that is the smartest thing to do, I don't think so. But there is regulatory pressure slowly piling up. And I think there's a tsunami coming for MedTech in terms of sustainability regulations. Maybe it's not going to be as harsh as painted right now because they're working on simplifications, but don't think they're going to go away. MedTech is not going to get an exemption this time. Good. So, in summary, where we have existing commitments, where we have competition moving, where we have customer demand, and where we have regulation looming, there will be medical devices emerging. So, if you want to be one of those companies who does a sustainable medical device, there's a link in the description for you. I'd love to chat and get to know you. And if you like the video, comment, like, and subscribe, because YouTube will show you more of these videos. It's not for me, it's for you. Of course, it helps me, but it's so that the algorithm knows what you like and shows you more of this content. And if you have a request for another video or you have a question, just write them down in the comments below. I'll read all of them and I'll get you an answer as soon as possible. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this brought a lot of value to you, and until the next time.